The Conclusion to the Dusty Key Mystery by Claire Lynn. Chapter 5. The Treasure. Georgie churned up the dirt. The others scooped at the loose soil with their fingers. Little by little, they freed the box. At last, they pulled it out of the hole. It wasn't fancy, just a plain wooden box with a strap of iron fastened by a rusted lock. "Give me the key," Pete demanded. "Just get out of my way," Georgie grunted, pushing Pete's round stomach. While Peter picked himself up, Georgie was carefully fitting the key into the lock. "It's not so easy to..." "Georgie!" A loud call shattered the silence. Georgie jumped. "It's Pa," he gasped. "Quick, put this all back so he won't see it." By this time, Pete had regained his footing and frantically helped cover the little box with the loose dirt. The girls put up some of the tall grass and laid it about. "Let's go meet him," George suggested. "If he doesn't come all the way over, he won't see." The four hurried toward the lantern in the distance. "Is that you, Georgie?" Pa's voice demanded. "Yeah, Pa." They had met in the field. "What are you kids doing over here?" Pa asked sternly. The four stood silently. "Your folks dropped by our place a bit ago looking for you and Julie," he said to Peter. "We've been hunting everywheres." They all turned and headed for the farmhouse. Their spirits sank lower with every step. It would be impossible to slip away again tonight. What if someone beat them to the treasure? Georgie thought. Of course, they might not have a key. Then he stood as though petrified, hand pressed hopelessly against his empty hip pocket. His heart seemed to drop to the pit of his stomach. In his haste, Georgie had left the key in the lock. They had neither treasure, key, poem, nor map. "What's the matter, son?" Pa asked. He held the lantern close to Georgie's face. "Oh, it's nothing," the boy shrugged. "I just got a funny pain in here." He held his hand to his heart. "It's gone now. I'm okay." His father looked at him searchingly and then moved on in the shadows. Georgie wondered if he should just tell Pa about it so he would let them go back. Then Pa would be sure to claim the treasure didn't belong to them anyway. When they reached the house, Mr. and Mrs. Mueller were there, ready to lay into Pete for running off without telling. Instead, they hurried their two children off to the car and drove away. Georgie was glad there hadn't been a chance to tell Pete about the key, for he would surely have been furious. He did tell Nellie Jane, however, just before they went to bed. At first, she was very sad, but she smiled sweetly and said, "We'll ask Jesus to watch over it for us, if it's his will. He can take care of it for us." Then she knelt down by the cot and prayed to Jesus about the treasure. It made Georgie's heart feel hungry to know Jesus. Never before had chores been done so fast. The chickens were fed, the eggs gathered, the cows led to pasture, and the water drawn for Ma's wash, almost before folks were aware that another day had begun. His work done, Georgie went bounding across the field with Nellie Jane just behind. "Can't take time to go over and get Pete," the boy explained, as they cut across toward the Benson farm. Just as they reached the oak, however, Pete came puffing along with Julie at his heels. "Good thing nobody swiped Pa's spade," George said, taking it from the place where he had stood it by the tree. "I'd have really been in for it then." The earth was damp and loose, and it took only a few minutes to uncover the chest again. Pete grabbed up the little box. He looked in surprise at the key with its little crumpled muddy card attached. "What's this?" "Guess I forgot it last night," Georgie mumbled. "What a dunce!" Pete cried. Georgie had thrown down the spade, and now he snatched the box. The others gathered in a little circle while he worked with the key. "Oh, hurry," Julie shouted. The boy grit his teeth and pressed with all his might. "Give it to me," Pete urged. "I think it's coming. There, it's opening." He tugged at the lid and pulled it back. Inside were folds of pink tissue paper. On top, there was another poem written on a card. Georgie picked it up and read, "When into the chest you look, don't despise the little book. There's a treasure deep inside, greatest treasure one could hide. The digging you've already done, the searching part has just begun. Don't give up till you can say, I'm richer far than yesterday." While Georgie read, Peter had reached into the box and folded back the wrapping. "What is it?" he asked, holding up the black book and examining it. Nellie Jane squealed, "Oh, it's a Bible!" Georgie and the others looked it over in wonder. "But where's the treasure?" Pete asked, searching the corners of the box. "It's inside the book. The poem says we gotta search for it." Georgie began to turn the pages carefully. "I think I know," Nellie Jane began. "Hello," a strange voice said from just above them. They jumped. Georgie thrust the book under his t-shirt. They recognized the same man they had seen yesterday. They'd been so intent on what they were doing, they had not even heard him come up from behind. "What do you have there?" he asked in a friendly way. The four glanced at one another in frightened silence. "I'm not gonna hurt you," the man laughed. He was looking around. "I see you've been digging." "Who are you?" Pete asked. "Well," he said, sitting on his heels beside them, "I was a very good friend of Myra Benson, who used to live in this place. I was with her just before she died, and she had me bury a treasure back here for her." The children began to relax. Georgie pulled the Bible from under his shirt, and the man smiled. "Is it really a treasure?" Peter asked doubtfully. "It most certainly is," the man answered. "It was the dearest thing she possessed. As she had no kin and no friends, she feared no one would pay much attention to her precious Bible. That was why she wrote the little poems and had the chest buried." "We're glad to have a Bible," Nellie Jane said, stroking the book in her cousin's hand. Georgie nodded. "Sometimes we play Sunday school and we need one to read from." The man seemed pleased. "Well then, perhaps you would like to know why I've been surveying this land." He pointed to his tripod. "Mrs. Benson has willed this land to be used for building a little chapel. We are to begin soon. You four shall be the first members in my Sunday school class." "Oh, goody, goody!" Nellie Jane jumped up and clapped her hands. Georgie felt all warm and glad inside. They all stood up then, and the young man put his hand thoughtfully on Georgie's shoulder. "Since you all seem so eager to begin, perhaps we could arrange to hold classes in the house until our building is ready. Let's go up and look around." They followed. "Tell me, Mr. Georgie began. "Duncan," he supplied. "Did you have a light in the house last Friday night?" "Why, no. I've never been out here except in the daytime," he replied. Georgie was thoughtful. "We saw a light upstairs," he explained. "We were sure." They went in the back door using Mr. Duncan's key. Nothing looked mysterious in the sunlight. They passed that little green door, crossed the large empty rooms, and went up the creaking stairs. In the bedroom, they stood and looked around. It was a narrow room. The glass was broken from the window frame and lay shattered on the floor. The sun spread paths of light upon the wall. "I don't think Georgie really saw a light," Pete scoffed. "But maybe he did," Mr. Duncan said thoughtfully. "How? Where?" Nellie Jane wanted to know. "What time was it?" Mr. Duncan asked. About 8:30. Nellie Jane came early that night. That's about the time the full moon's been rising in the east, he explained. He was looking at the wall opposite the window. This room faces east. When the moon is just coming up, there's your light. He pointed to a mirror plaque on the wall. It was tilted downward to be easily seen from the bed. Upon the mirror, words were printed. Georgie read to them. The law of thy mouth is better unto me than thousands of gold and silver. Does that mean the Bible is better than gold and silver? Pete asked. Mr. Duncan nodded his answer. Mrs. Benson was rich, and she has left her greatest treasure for you to find. Julie had been staring at Mr. Duncan during the conversation. She placed her hands on her hips now and asked, Are you in Emily? They all laughed. Then Georgie spoke. Say, that poem did say an enemy might try to snatch our treasure. Yes, there is one who would keep you from finding the treasure hidden in the book. You mean the devil? Nellie Jane answered, because she knew. Yes, indeed, Mr. Duncan answered. There are many people who own a Bible, yet they do not hold it dear. They've never found the riches in it that could be theirs forever, because the enemy of their souls snatches away good things from their thoughts. They never open their hearts to receive the Lord's treasure. The little group moved silently down the stairs and into the sunlight again. Georgie clutched the Bible in his rough, boyish hands. As Mr. Duncan locked the door, Georgie spoke. Mr. Duncan, we're only children, but if you help us, we'd like to search out the treasure God has hidden in this book. Yes, said Mr. Duncan, I'll be happy to help. This concludes the reading of The Dusty Key Mystery by Claire Lynn. If you liked this reading and you would like to hear more, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends.